I recently discovered that my wife has been involved in a 5-year affair, and my stepdaughter helped her cover it up. I ended up kicking them both out and draining our bank accounts. I never imagined I'd find myself in this nightmarish situation. But here I am, at 2 a.m., staring at my computer screen, trying to make sense of how my life unraveled in just a few weeks. My name is Paul. I'm 42 years old, and until recently, I thought I had it all. I had a beautiful wife, Anna, who is 39, a great stepdaughter, Claire, who is 17, and a successful career as an architect. We lived in a lovely suburb of Chicago, had a close circle of friends, and I truly believed we were happy. It turns out, I was living in a fool's paradise. Everything started to fall apart about a month ago. Anna and I had been married for 8 years, and I'd been in Claire's life since she was 9. I always thought we had a good relationship, perhaps not perfect, but whose family is? Anna worked as a pharmaceutical sales rep, which meant she traveled frequently. I never minded this. I trusted her completely and was proud of her success. Claire and I had our share of typical teenage ups and downs, but I loved her like my own daughter. One day, while working from home on some blueprints for a new project, Anna was away on a business trip and Claire was at school. I needed to print some documents, but my home office printer was out of ink. Remembering that Anna had mentioned having extra cartridges in her desk drawer, I went to get one. As I opened her drawer, I found a small, unfamiliar box tucked in the back. My curiosity got the better of me, so I pulled it out. Inside were a bunch of hotel key cards, movie ticket stubs, and small souvenirs. Nothing unusual for someone who travels for work. Except, these were from places Anna had never mentioned visiting. There was even a keychain from Las Vegas, a city she'd always claimed to dislike. I had a bad feeling, but I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid and that there had to be a reasonable explanation. Still, something didn't feel right. I put everything back exactly as I found it and tried to focus on my work, but my mind kept drifting back to that box. Over the next few days, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I started paying closer attention to Anna's trips, her phone habits, and her explanations of where she'd been. Little inconsistencies that I'd never noticed before suddenly seemed glaringly obvious, like the way she'd turn her phone face down when I entered the room or step outside to take certain calls, claiming they were work-related. I hated myself for it, but I began snooping. I'm not proud of it, but I felt like I was losing my mind. One night, while Anna was in the shower, I checked her phone. I found several texts from a contact named Mike, which seemed oddly personal for a work colleague. I didn't have time to read all the texts, but what I did see was devastating. Messages like, "Mike can't wait to see you next week. I've missed you." And Anna's response, "Me too." These trips are the highlight of my month, left me feeling sick. I wanted to confront her immediately, but I knew I needed more evidence. What if I was jumping to conclusions? What if Mike was just a close friend? I needed to be absolutely certain before potentially blowing up my marriage. The next day, I did something I'm ashamed of. I installed a keylogger on our shared home computer. Anna often used it for her personal email when she didn't want to use her work laptop. It felt like a serious invasion of privacy, but I was desperate for answers. A week later, while Anna was away on another business trip, I reviewed the keylogger data. The emails I found were initially innocent, discussions about work and industry gossip between Anna and a man named Scott. But as I read further, the tone of the emails grew more intimate, with inside jokes and references to times they'd spent together. I dug deeper into credit card statements and bank records, discovering charges for hotels and restaurants in cities Anna had never mentioned visiting for work. There were even plane tickets to Las Vegas, 3 trips in the past year alone. I felt nauseated. 8 years of marriage, and who knows how many of those were built on lies. I remembered all the times I'd kissed her goodbye at the airport, telling her to have a safe trip. How many of those times had she been flying off to meet him? But the betrayal went even deeper. As I continued to investigate, I found messages between Anna and Claire, my stepdaughter, the girl I'd helped raise for 8 years. Claire had known about the affair for at least 2 years. There were texts where Anna was coaching Claire on what to tell me about her trips, asking her to cover for her. Claire had lied to my face, telling me Anna had called when she hadn't and fabricating stories about her mom's work events. For the next week, I was a wreck. I couldn't sleep or eat. I spent nights replaying every conversation and interaction, desperately trying to piece together the truth. I couldn't believe how blind I had been. During the day, I went through the motions at work, but my mind was elsewhere, consumed by the realization of what I had uncovered. I'd catch myself staring at photos of us on my desk, wondering if Anna was thinking about Scott when we took them. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal when Anna returned from her trip. I watched her unpack, listened to her stories about boring meetings and networking events, all the while knowing they were lies. Every smile, every kiss felt like a knife twisting in my heart. I wanted to confront her immediately, to scream and demand answers, but I forced myself to wait. I needed to stay calm and ensure I had all my facts straight. I couldn't give her any room to deny or deflect. After 3 agonizing days of maintaining a facade, I decided it was time. I waited until Claire was out with friends. I couldn't handle both of them at once. I sat Anna down in our living room, the same space where we had spent countless evenings watching movies, talking about our days, and planning our future. The irony wasn't lost on me. "We need to talk," I said. Anna looked confused, maybe even a little worried. "Is everything okay?" I laughed bitterly. "No, everything is not okay. I know about Scott." The color drained from her face. She opened her mouth, probably to deny it, but I cut her off. I laid out everything I had found. The emails, the credit card charges, the trips to Las Vegas. With each piece of evidence, I watched her crumble a little more. When I finished, there was a heavy silence. Anna started crying. "I'm so sorry," she finally said. "I never meant for it to go on for so long. I love you, I do, but..." "But what?" I snapped. "You love him too? You're confused? Save it, Anna. I don't want to hear your excuses. How long? How long has this been going on?" She hesitated before finally admitting. 5 years. 5 years? I repeated, feeling the weight of her words. That's more than half of our marriage. It felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "And Claire?" I asked, the name escaping my lips like a wounded whisper. Anna looked taken aback, clearly surprised that I knew about Claire's involvement. 2 years, she said, tears streaming down her face. She found out by accident. I made her promise not to tell you. I told her I'd end it, but you didn't, I said flatly. I don't believe you. Unable to bear any more of her excuses, I stood up. "I want you out of this house," I said firmly. "Go stay with your sister. I'll have divorce papers drawn up." Anna began sobbing uncontrollably. "Please, Paul, we can work this out. I'll end it with Scott for good this time. I'll do anything. Please don't throw away 8 years of marriage." I laughed bitterly, but there was no humor in it. "You threw it away every time you lied to me, every time you went to see him, not me." She tried to argue, but I was done listening. I went upstairs and packed some of her clothes into a suitcase. When I came back down, Anna was still on the couch, crying. I dropped the suitcase at her feet. "Get out," I said coldly. "I can't even look at you right now." As soon as the door closed behind her, I broke down. I cried, like I hadn't cried since I was a child. Dealing with Claire was even harder. She came home the next day, acting as if everything was normal. It made me sick. I waited until after dinner to confront her. "Your mom is staying with your aunt for a while," I said. "I know about Scott, Claire. I know you've been covering for her." The look on her face was like a knife twisting in my heart. Shock, fear, guilt. It was all there. She began crying immediately. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "Mom made me promise not to tell. She said she'd end it. She said it would break up our family if you knew." And you believed her? I asked, voice trembling. For 2 years, you lied to my face every day. Claire cried harder. I didn't want to lose you. You're the only dad I've really ever had. I couldn't bear the thought of losing you. I wanted to comfort her. This was the girl I'd helped raise for 8 years, who I'd been there for through every important moment since she was 9. But every time I looked at her, all I could see was betrayal. Pack your things, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You're going to stay with your mom at your aunt's place. Claire's eyes widened in disbelief. No, please don't make me leave, she pleaded, tears streaming down her face as she reached out to me. I stepped back, feeling a pang of anguish. You should have thought of that before lying to me for 2 years. I can't even look at you right now without feeling betrayed. I need you to go. Claire ran upstairs, sobbing uncontrollably. I could hear Claire moving around as she packed. When she came back downstairs, her face was red and puffy from crying. Please, she begged one more time. I love you, Dad. Please don't do this. Hearing her call me Dad nearly broke me, but I stood my ground. Go, I said firmly. Now. The next few days were a blur. I barely ate or slept, wandering around the house and staring at photos of our family, wondering how everything had gone so horribly wrong. My colleagues noticed something was off, but I brushed off their concerns. How could I explain that my entire life had been a lie? That the woman I loved had been cheating on me for years? That the child I'd raised as my own had betrayed me? A week after kicking Anna and Claire out, I finally broke down and told my best friend Ryan everything. He was shocked and angry on my behalf, offering me a place to stay to help me get out of the house. I declined, though. Ryan suggested I see a therapist, but I brushed him off. The thought of rehashing everything with a stranger seemed exhausting. Besides, what could they tell me that I didn't already know? That I'd been a fool and trusted too easily? I was already beating myself up enough without paying someone to tell me the same things. 2 weeks after the confrontation, Anna's lawyer contacted me about dividing our assets and arranging custody for Claire. In a moment of anger, I went to the bank and withdrew everything from our joint accounts, about $95,000. I knew it probably wasn't legal, but I wasn't thinking straight. I figured half of it was mine anyway, and Anna owed me for years of lies. I moved the money into a new account in just my name. For a moment, it felt good to take some control back, but that satisfaction was short-lived. Anna's family started blowing up my phone, saying that what I'd done wasn't right and that I needed to think it through. Her sister left me a voicemail, calling me a heartless bastard for kicking out Claire. Anna's parents, who I'd always thought of as my own family, threatened legal action over the money. Some of my friends think I went too far, especially with taking the money and kicking out Claire. They say I'm punishing a kid for an adult's mistake and letting my anger cloud my judgment. Others believe I'm justified, arguing that Anna and Claire betrayed me and now they're facing the consequences. My own family is divided. My parents are supportive, angry on my behalf for how I've been treated. But my sister thinks I'm being too harsh, especially with Claire. I could hear Claire moving around as she packed. When she came back downstairs, her face was red and puffy from crying. Please, she begged one more time. I love you, Dad. Please don't do this. Hearing her call me Dad nearly broke me, but I stood my ground. Go, I said firmly. Now. The next few days were a blur. I barely ate or slept, wandering around the house and staring at photos of our family, wondering how everything had gone so horribly wrong. My colleagues noticed something was off, but I brushed off their concerns. How could I explain that my entire life had been a lie? That the woman I loved had been cheating on me for years? That the child I'd raised as my own had betrayed me? A week after kicking Anna and Claire out, I finally broke down and told my best friend Ryan everything. He was shocked and angry on my behalf, offering me a place to stay to help me get out of the house. I declined, though. Ryan suggested I see a therapist, but I brushed him off. The thought of rehashing everything with a stranger seemed exhausting. Besides, What could they tell me that I didn't already know? That I'd been a fool and trusted too easily? I was already beating myself up enough without paying someone to tell me the same things. 2 weeks after the confrontation, Anna's lawyer contacted me about dividing our assets and arranging custody for Claire. In a moment of anger, I went to the bank and withdrew everything from our joint accounts, about $95,000. I knew it probably wasn't legal, but I wasn't thinking straight. I figured half of it was mine anyway, and Anna owed me for years of lies. I moved the money into a new account in just my name. For a moment, it felt good to take some control back, but that satisfaction was short-lived. Anna's family started blowing up my phone, saying that what I'd done wasn't right and that I needed to think it through. Her sister left me a voicemail calling me a heartless bastard for kicking out Claire. Anna's parents, who I'd always thought of as my own family, threatened legal action over the money. Some of my friends think I went too far, especially with taking the money and kicking out Claire. They say I'm punishing a kid for an adult's mistake and letting my anger cloud my judgment. Others believe I'm justified, arguing that Anna and Claire betrayed me and now they're facing the consequences. My own family is divided. My parents are supportive, angry on my behalf for how I've been treated. But my sister thinks I'm being too harsh, especially with Claire. My sister keeps reminding me that Claire isn't my biological child and that she was put in an impossible position by her mother. I'm trying to focus on the future, but it's hard. Everything I thought I knew about my life and family has been turned upside down, and I'm struggling to make sense of it all. It's been a month since I confronted Anna and started writing this post. Claire has sent me several emotional emails, begging for forgiveness and asking to come home. She promises she'd make it up to me somehow. Reading her pleas breaks my heart all over again, but I haven't responded to any of them. I'm at a loss for words and unsure of what to do next. So here I am, a month into this nightmare, still unsure of my next steps. I never thought I'd be the guy posting on Reddit about my crumbling marriage. But here we are. I guess I'm looking for advice, or maybe just validation that I'm not crazy for feeling this way. How do you move on when your entire life has been a lie? Update 1. It's been 2 months since my last post, and a lot has happened. I'm not sure if things are better or worse, but they're definitely different. First, the legal battles. Anna's lawyer came after me hard about the money I took from our joint account. They threatened to take me to court for financial misconduct if I didn't return at least half of what I'd withdrawn. After discussing it with my own lawyer, yes, I finally got one, I agreed to transfer half the money back. It felt like admitting defeat, but my lawyer assured me it was the smart move in the long run. The house is another point of contention. Anna wants to sell it and split the proceeds, but I'm not ready to let go. This is the home we built together. I designed it myself. The thought of strangers living here makes me sick, but I also can't afford to buy her out on my own. We're at a stalemate for now. As for Claire, the situation has become more complicated. About a month ago, she showed up at the house unannounced. I was working in the home office when I heard a knock at the door. When I opened it, there she was, looking small and scared, with a backpack over her shoulder. "I'm sorry," she said before I could speak. "I know you probably don't want to see me, but I didn't know where else to go. I should have sent Claire away. I wanted to. But seeing her standing there so lost, I couldn't bring myself to do it. I let her in. It turns out she had just had a huge fight with Anna. Claire had finally confronted her mother about the affair and about making her lie to me for years. Anna had tried to justify her actions, claiming that Claire couldn't understand adult relationships. This led to a screaming match, with Claire accusing Anna of ruining their family. In the heat of the moment, Claire packed a bag and left, ending up at my place. "Can I stay here?" Claire asked, her voice trembling. "Just for a few days. I'll find somewhere else to go, I promise." I hesitated. "Claire, it's not that simple. You're still a minor. Legally, I can't just let you stay here without your mother's permission." Her face fell. "Please, I can't go back there. I can't face her right now." Against my better judgment, I agreed to let her stay the night. I told her we'd figure things out in the morning. I made up the guest room for her, the same room she'd slept in when she first came to live with us 8 years ago. That night, I heard muffled sobs coming from Claire's room. The next morning, I called Anna to let her know Claire was with me. To say she was upset would be an understatement. She accused me of turning Claire against her and manipulating the situation. I let her rant, too exhausted to argue. "She can stay here for now," I said when Anna finally paused for breath. "But we need to figure out a long-term solution. This isn't healthy for any of us." Anna reluctantly agreed, probably realizing she didn't have much choice. Claire was almost 18, and forcing her to come home would likely push her further away. So now, 2 months after I thought I'd severed all ties with my old life, I find myself living with my stepdaughter again. It's complicated. There are moments when it almost feels normal, like when we're having dinner together or when I help her with her homework. But then I remember everything that's happened, and the anger and hurt come rushing back. Claire is trying, I'll give her that. She's been going to therapy, something I still can't bring myself to do. She's made multiple attempts to apologize and explain her actions. She's told me how guilty she felt lying to me, how she convinced herself it was the right thing to do to keep our family together. "I thought if I just kept quiet, Mom would end it like she promised," she said one night. "I was stupid. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. I want to forgive her, I really do. But every time I start to let my guard down, I remember those 2 years of lies, and I pull back." As for Anna, we're still barely speaking. Our communication is limited to emails about financial matters and Claire's well-being. She's made a few attempts to apologize and explain herself, but I'm not ready to hear it. I did learn from Claire that Anna has ended things with Scott for good. Apparently, he wasn't too keen on the idea of being with Anna full-time or dealing with all the fallout from their affair. Part of me felt a twisted satisfaction in that. Let her experience a fraction of the rejection and betrayal I've felt. My friends and family are still divided on how to handle the situation. Some think I'm being too soft by letting Claire stay with me, while others praise me for stepping up despite everything. I'm not sure which group is right. I still have days where the anger threatens to overwhelm me. Days when I want to sell the house, change my number, and disappear to start a new life somewhere else. But then I look at Claire, see the fear in her eyes when she thinks I might kick her out again, and I know I can't do it. For better or worse, she's still my family, even if she's not my biological daughter. So that's where things stand now. The divorce proceedings are moving forward, slowly but surely. I'll update if anything significant happens. Edit. After posting the last update, I received a flood of comments and messages. While many were supportive, a significant number questioned my decision to let Claire back into my life. To those asking why I took Claire back, I understand your concerns. Believe me, I've asked myself the same questions countless times. The decision to let Claire stay wasn't easy, and it wasn't made lightly. Yes, she lied to me for 2 years. Yes, she betrayed my trust. And no, she's not my biological daughter. But family isn't always about blood. For 8 years, I was the only father Claire knew. I was there for her first day of high school, taught her to drive, and helped with college applications. I celebrated Claire's successes and comforted her through heartbreaks. Those 8 years of love and memories don't just disappear because of 2 years of lies. Claire was a child caught in an impossible situation created by her mother. She made the wrong choice, absolutely, but she's showing genuine remorse and actively working to make amends. She's in therapy, confronting her actions and their consequences. Am I still hurt? Absolutely. Do I still have moments of anger and resentment? Of course. But I'm trying to separate my feelings about Anna's betrayal from my relationship with Claire. I'm not saying I've forgiven her completely. Trust is still an issue, and we have a long way to go. But I'm giving her a chance to prove herself and show that she's learned from her mistakes. Maybe I am being too soft. Maybe this will blow up in my face. But I have to follow my heart on this one. Claire needs support right now, and despite everything, I still love her like a daughter. I appreciate everyone's concern and advice. This isn't an easy situation, and there's no clear right or wrong answer. I'm just trying to navigate it the best I can, one day at a time. Update 2. It's been 6 months since my last update, and a lot has changed. Some for the better, some still uncertain. First, the divorce is final. After months of negotiations, arguments, and compromises, Anna and I are officially no longer married. The house was sold. Neither of us could afford to buy the other out, and living there had become too painful. Every room held memories, both good and bad. It was time to let it go. We split the proceeds, which gave me enough for a down payment on a smaller place closer to my office. Claire turned 18 2 months ago. We had a small celebration, just the two of us and a cake from the local bakery. It felt bittersweet. I was proud of the young woman Claire is becoming, but I couldn't help thinking about all the family birthdays we'd celebrated together before everything fell apart. Our relationship has improved slowly but surely. The therapy Claire's been attending seems to be helping. She's more open now, more willing to talk about her feelings and take responsibility for her actions. We've had some hard conversations, but we've also shared moments reflecting on the good times we had as a family. One night, after a particularly emotional therapy session, Claire came to me with tears in her eyes. "I know I've said it before," she said, "but I'm so sorry for everything. I was young and scared, but that's no excuse. You deserved better. I just hope that someday you can forgive me." For the first time in months, I hugged her. "I'm working on it," I told her, and I meant it. Claire's relationship with Anna is still strained. They're talking, but the trust between them has been severely damaged. Claire spends most of her time with me, only visiting Anna on occasional weekends. As for Anna, things are more complicated. About a month ago, she reached out and asked if we could meet to talk. My first instinct was to refuse, but curiosity got the better of me. Seeing her again was harder than I'd expected. "I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness," she said after we'd sat in awkward silence for several minutes. "What I did was unforgivable, but I want you to know how sorry I am, not just for the affair, but for all the lies, for involving Claire, for throwing away everything we had." She went on to explain that she'd been in intensive therapy since our split. She'd been diagnosed with depression and was now on medication. She talked about how she'd struggled with feelings of inadequacy and a fear of commitment long before she met Scott. Anna explained how the affair had been a way of sabotaging her own happiness, a reflection of her deep-seated belief that she didn't deserve it. "None of this is an excuse," she said, wiping away her tears. "I know that. I'm just trying to understand why I did what I did so I never make the same mistakes again." I looked at her, feeling a mix of exhaustion and curiosity. "What do you want from me, Anna? Why are you telling me all this now?" She took a deep breath. "I don't expect anything from you, Paul. I know I've lost any right to ask for your trust or forgiveness. I needed you to know that I understand the magnitude of what I've done. And I wanted to thank you for being there for Claire. She tells me how much you've helped her through all of this, even though you had every right to turn your back on her." We talked for a while longer about Claire, the divorce, and our separate lives. It was the longest conversation we'd had in months that didn't involve lawyers or financial negotiations. When we finally parted ways, I felt different. Not better exactly, but as if something had shifted. Claire was curious about my meeting with Anna. When I told her about it, she seemed relieved. "I'm glad Mom's getting help," she said. "Maybe someday we can all be in the same room without it being awkward and painful." I appreciated Claire's optimism, even if I wasn't sure if it was possible. As for me, I finally started seeing a therapist of my own. It took a lot of convincing from Claire and my friends, but I realized I needed to address my own issues if I wanted to move forward.